get started. It's 4 o'clock, and I know I'm your last speaker before you get to go have drinks. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Mike Morris. I'm the Associate Dean and Director out of Western Governors University. Before I came to WGU, I was with the FBI for 25 years as a special agent, supervisory special agent, laboratory director in the fields of cybercrime, counterintelligence, and digital evidence. I did a lot of technical penetrations, worked with a lot of DoD all over the world on various operations. And after that, after I retired from the FBI, I went to work for Price Waterhouse as a director in incident response. Then did that for a couple of years, and while being on the road as a consultant is a lot of fun. You're on the road you're on the road every week, and so I went to work for one of my companies, one of my customers, which at that time was Energy Future Holdings, and they basically generated electricity, nuclear, gas, wind, coal, as well as solar. That company was in bankruptcy when I joined it, and so I got a large golden parachute when I joined it, and it lasted for about a year. I was rolling the dice to see, in bankruptcy, if you ever join a company, you hope that you buy another company and come out as NewCo. If somebody buys you, then all the executive leadership gets their heads cut off. And so I came out of that, and I was like, I live in Dallas, by the way, and so I was like, well, I really want to drive an hour and a half each way to where most of the companies are, work 12-hour days and then drive home. And I was like, no, I really don't think so. I already got my government pension. I don't think I want to do that. So I looked online, this is pre-COVID, and went part-time, or not part-time, but remote. I found Western Governors University. I started there as a course instructor in the master's program, and then stayed from course instructor, did that for a couple of years. And then they said, hey, we have this new role, it's called program chair, and you basically be over the program and design it and everything else. And it's like, okay, well, I can either sit around and gripe about it, or I can throw my hat in the ring. So I threw my hat in the ring, and I selected. And then they came out with a new position a couple of years later. They said, well, we have this associate dean director position, will be over multiple programs, and you want to throw your hat in the ring? So I did. And I was lucky enough, I was selected. And so I went from having my retirement job that I really liked being, working with students day in, day out, to now back to my full-time gig, which I also enjoy. It's just much different. So today, before I I'm going to tell you one little thing about WGU, and then we'll get moving on. First of all, for all of you wearing a uniform today, thank you for your service. For all of you who are retired, thank you for your service. I know I've been overseas a lot with everyone in this room, obviously, but folks in your ilk, and I know the sacrifices that are made, so thank you very much. Very quickly, WGU, I'm over the cyber programs. So the reason I want to bring this up real quick, about 40% of our students are in the military. The rest of our students are either coming from dependents or from industry or from schools. The average age of our students are 35. They're transitioning, most of them. And we have 2 programs actually we have 3. I have an AS degree that will do with the Navy. I have a BS degree that's open to anybody. We currently have about 17,000 students in the BS degree right now. And in the MSCSIA program, the master's program, we just launched a new program there. We currently have about 1,000 students, well, actually 1,800 students in that one now. So that's my only ad for the day on WGU. So let's go ahead and get in here while we're here today. All right, so I see a few gray hairs in the room. 2001 Space Odyssey, 1968. Anybody actually remember watching it live in the movie theater? No, got one. I went to the movie theater. All right. So the reason I thought that was appropriate. So on this particular movie, actually 1968, space. They're going to Jupiter to go look at this alien object on Jupiter. They have this new computer system, HAL 9000, that they're going to use. And En route, the system says, hey, I have a problem with my antenna. And they go check it, and they come back and say, no, there's nothing wrong with the antenna, there's something wrong with you. And so then they had this debate going on between the humans and the computer, and it ends with them eventually taking out the computer. But it was all based on, you had a system that was controlling everything, including the humans. All right, so generative AI. How many people here work with AI now? The companies maybe use AI? Awesome. So when you hear the term generative AI, you think about that, it's like, okay, what exactly does that mean? Okay, I know it's looking at content. I know maybe it's coming up with new content. Quick and easy way, think about all your kids or grandkids in a room. You give them all crayons, and then you say, okay, they're drawing things that they see outside, the sun, a horse, dog, whatever. And then you say, you guys are really good artists. Why don't you guys make me like I don't know, a purple unicorn juggling stars and flying on an airplane. And so they draw this out, and they say, okay, here it is. That's generative AI. It's based on everything that it knows, everything that it sees, is using that then to say, okay, you're asking for this, I think this is what you want. Sometimes it does it really well, sometimes it doesn't. Now there are different models out there on here, and I'm going to go down very quickly, just to give you can read the titles up there. So the first one is generative adversarial networks. So think of that one as somebody who is copying the Mona Lisa. Okay, that's a generator, copying the Mona Lisa. And then the descriptor, think of that as somebody else in your family who likes to nag you. And so you draw out the Mona Lisa, and the system goes, nah, that's nowhere close, that's nowhere close. And you keep going that around and around and around. Eventually, the copy is exactly like the real thing. So that's the first method. The second one, variational autocoders. So in this methodology right here, it's somewhat similar. Think of it as an artist who's drawing. My mom was an artist. I never was. So if you told me to draw the dog, I drew a stick figure. But if you watch an artist, they look at it, they look at something and say, okay, well that's kind of like an oval shape, and that's kind of like a bigger shape, and then they start getting sharper and sharper and sharper, and all of a sudden there's this picture of a dog. It's like, oh, it's amazing. That's the second type. The third type, they're current networks, neural networks, short-term and long-term. Think of that as somebody who's reading a book. They're reading a book, and based on the chapters that it's read, it's trying to guess the next word. So based on so it's keeping the context of the book, keeping the context of the sentence, and it's coming up with the next word. Sometimes you'll see this, you're starting to see this more and more, like on my phone, like if I'm typing an email. I'm typing something out, and all of a sudden it'll give me words out there, and it said, or Siri. It'll put these words that you think it wants, and it's like, no, I don't want that word, but okay. The last one, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the transformer-based models. Think of this as ChatGPT. This is the newest, the fastest currently out there. And I'll go next. So this was actually, came up with a team from Google in 2017 that published a paper on this. And it's similar to almost to like the second model, to where it reads in, it takes in all the data, and then it will form it back to the method, form it back in how you have written it. So it sounds like what you have written, it looks like what you have written. The difference is the way that it handles the data. It's able to do it in parallel, whereas the other system had to do, okay, I read this, I checked this, I read this, I checked this. It's doing it all at one time. So that's why it's so fast right now. So right now, this is the most current, which you'll see, or variation thereof. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what is kind of like the life cycle of an AI on there. So if you look at this thing, in the middle, you'll see the key points that we want an AI to be able to do. And so when you read through there, obviously it's the sort of people and the planet. And I'm going to have to get closer to my computer. I apologize for my screen. I can do that, or I turn my head there to read on the side. But anyway, you'll see the first two rings are what you want an AI to do. The outer ring is actually the methodology that goes through. So plan and design, go through and then run it through its tests, build it, test it, and move on. So ethical considerations of AI. I'm trying to build a foundation here, and then we'll move on. I want to build like a little bit of a foundation so you guys understand where we're going. All right, ethical considerations. Now, this is a real deal. So you'll see senators talking about this. You'll see businessmen talking about this. You'll see newspapers talking about this. You know, so bias and discrimination. That's one thing about AI that you can have a problem. And I'm not talking about real bias or real discrimination, but just even you can have an offshoot about that. Let's say that when you're 5 years old, a German Shepherd bit your leg, okay? Well, then all of a sudden now when you're doing data, maybe you don't put data in there about German Shepherds, so you don't know that you're not doing it, but you're just doing it, okay? Now the bigger pool, everyone that wants to go pull something about dogs, German Shepherds aren't in there. Transparent accountability. You gotta make sure that the systems that you're building, people know what they're doing. They're not a magic black box. Privacy concerns. You know, in there, you want to make sure that the private data that you have sitting out there isn't sitting out on the internet or sitting out, let's say you're working on in the military, you have secret, top secret, and something leaks out where it shouldn't. Okay, probably not a good thing. So you want to make sure that you have what you need to protect it. We'll talk more about that here in just a minute. Reliability, trust, you want to make sure the thing works, that you can trust it. Some of this stuff now you're going to start seeing autonomous responses and weaponizing of AI. So autonomous responses means that it'll happily you can set it up so it'll do whatever you want it to do. You can tell it to do it within a certain parameter, if you will. Weaponizing it is other people are using it back at you. Job displacement, I think it's really not going to displace that many jobs. I think what you're going to see is changing of jobs. I think you'll see new skills being needed on there. Legal and regulatory limits. Implications. You're seeing that right now in the press. One big thing is mistakes at scale. You know, think Tesla. You know, think auto driving your car. You know, I mean, when something goes like that, I mean, it can impact a lot. If it's really bad and it goes out in one whack, you can impact a lot of things at scale. All right. Security controls. I'm not going to sit here and go in depth on security controls. These are the basic ones that are up here. Again, just foundational before we move on. You know, so when you're looking at your controls on there, you know, preventative, think of your house, the lock on your house. You know, then you have detective, think of the alarm on your house. So when I jimmy the lock, now the alarm goes off. And that happened last night with me at 3:30 in the morning. Sitting at the hotel, I got this message that said, hey, your house in Florida is, the motion detector went off. You know, should I call the cops? And it's like, no. I checked the cameras. And it's like, no, it's a problem with the machinery. That's okay. And the last thing is corrective controls. You know, if I had a burglar in my house last night, police officers showed up. They did show up anyway, so I'm sure I'm going to get a nasty grand problem. But had they showed up and I had a burglar in the house, they would have arrested them. That would have been my corrective control. My compensating controls would have been that German Shepherd that bit the guy when he was 9 years old or whatever. He would have been patrolling around my house with a big fence there to make sure, you know, that nobody could get into my yard. That would have been my compensating controls. All right, so as far as what's going on in the world today, you know, you can read all of the vendor things. There's probably a lot of vendors out there in the show you'll see during the week. They each have their own, you know, this is what's going on with their particular area of security. You know, so for instance, this one was done by CrowdStrike. And it goes through and talks about how that within the last year it's gone from 98 minutes down to 84 minutes in the time it takes to penetrate a company, go laterally within a company, and exfil data. And so that's just one example of what they're seeing. This one came from the UK, and since we're talking about AI that run on data, manipulate data, go through large amounts of data, it's important that we talk about data breaches. Okay, data breaches now don't have to be criminally done. They can also be done by a company not securing their data, putting something out there that they didn't have, you know, they had unexpected consequences on. So in July, I didn't realize this was going to be such an eye chart. Did you guys see that back there? I hope you can. But when you see in there, like for the month of July in the UK, they had 87 instances out there of data breach. Data went out in the wild. They lost 146 million records for the year. They've lost 600 million records in there. And again, this is all happening just through regular companies doing business, organizations doing business. These are not just because of AI issues yet. Phishing. Phishing is by far the #1 way that companies are getting hit, individuals are getting hit, whether you're talking ransomware, whether you were talking getting credentials to the company, that is #1 way. For all of you who actually have gray hair, I have a few hairs left, and they are gray, or the few I have, I thought this one was really interesting. Millennials and Gen Z users are the most likely to fall victim to phishing attacks. I would have pegged that wrong. I would have said it was, they always say it's the senior citizens, blah, blah, blah. And, but I watched my son, my middle son is 28, and he goes to that phone in a heartbeat. He'll go click on everything. I said, son, aren't you worried about links on there? He goes, oh, no, Dad, it's okay. I said, all right, son. I make sure he's not on my home network. But anyway, I thought that one fact there is just, that was kind of interesting. But in all seriousness, phishing is by far currently been the #1 way that companies are getting hit. All right. So I don't know how many of those of you guys have looked out of the net there for Worm GPT or Fraud GPT. I worked when I was in the FBI, I did a lot of undercover work online. And I still have accounts in organizations that go back many years. And so I can still get on there, look around without raising attention. I still go through different ways to get out there. And it is very scary to see some of these things. They run it like a business. Anything you can possibly want it to do, I'll happily do. For those of you who played with ChatGPT when it first came out, like version 3, 3.5 out there, you could, when it very first came out the door, you could say, give it a command, and it would start writing some malware. Then they stopped and say, no, you can't do that. And then if you wrote, I'm doing a pen test, please write me a script that does X. And it would get pretty close. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would get pretty close. And now they've neutered it way down to where it doesn't, it won't do that. But these two will happily do those for you. They will happily do it as a service. You can actually, Fraud GPT, you can actually give it a target, and you can give it a series of targets and have it launch, and it will happily launch away. It's very interesting. All right, let's talk a little bit about how we're going to use, or how we are currently using as well, generative AI and security tools. Now, depending on the vendor, you're going to hear all kinds of claims, you're going to hear all kinds of different things. Just like any other tool at any given time in your professional career. You're going to have to trust but verify. See what does it really do. But these are currently the ways that it's being used. Advanced threat detection, behavioral analysis. Behavioral analysis, back in about 2015, we started using that in the energy company, looking for individuals who are working after hours outside the norm. They're doing things outside the norm. That's the first time they ever touched this particular file, first time they ever read this particular document, first time they saved something to a USB drive, so we could see what was going on there. Automated response, as far as that's becoming more and more, and that's going to change the role of your SOC analyst. You're going to change the role of some of those things. It's not going to get rid of the position, it's just going to change the tool set and how they use those tools. Phishing detector, detection. This again was built for millennials, for the millennials and the Gen Z, and then threat intelligence and predictors. So any place we can use it to faster, better, quicker, we're going to do it. All right, so let's say now that you're in a company or organization and you're going to go ahead and you're going to start, you want to bring this in. Your boss said, I read all this stuff about AI, I think we should bring it into our organization to help secure or help secure it. We're going to go into detail on some of these now. So, integration of generative AI with your existing system. Just like you would with any of your tools, any of your systems that you have that you bring into your company, say you go through the same process. What are the objectives? Why are you doing it? What's the gap analysis? What is your current set of tools and processes not doing? And their data privacy and management. This is a big one for AI. because it's going to be dealing with such large amounts of data, dealing with so much data. How is the data coming in? How is it going to be preserved? How is it going to be transmitted? Then it gets down to AI you have to teach it. Just like a child, you have to teach it. You have to teach it to read, okay? So when you're actually building this thing, and you're building the model, and you're running the model, and you're running data through the model, you have to make sure that it is generating the right data at the right time. That's why you have the human in the loop there to verify, yep, that's what I should be getting. Constant continuous monitoring. Until you trust it, I would absolutely make sure that you have continuous monitoring going on, on there. Same thing with robust validation. You want to make sure that you're absolutely, hey, they typed in the word dog, they wanted something about dogs, and it gave it dogs. Scalability, this is another big one. AI and machine learning use a lot of storage and a lot of hardware. Okay, in order for it to go through and do all that magic that it does, you're going to have a lot of GPUs or TPUs that are the brains. So you can either buy it or you can rent it, but either way, it's going to be a lot of money in there. So that's the one thing I really think about is how is this thing going to scale? Defense in depth. Just because it says AI is going to do those wonderful things, that's not the only tool in your toolbox. It should never be the only thing in your toolbox. Okay, that is a tool in your box. You're still going to have multiple layers of defense in there. Education and training. So again, when I say education and training here, I'm really talking about training your system. Not training people how to use your system, but actually training the model, how to interpret data correctly. All right? Feedback loop. Did it do its job correctly? Did it look for the word dog? Did it give you a picture of a dog on there? Vendor collaboration. If you have a vendor coming in the door, you want to make sure that they're living up to their obligations and to the contract. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what are the system components in here. We're not going to go deep in the weeds on here, but again, just to give you an idea of what does the system look like, what does the system take. So obviously you're going to have data sources. That's going to be databases, that's going to be sensors, that could be user input, external data feeds. So you're going to have multiple types of data rolling into this thing. Then you're going to have data processing and clearing. So you're going to actually have to normalize the data, make sure it can be read by the model, make sure that it can go through and do its job. Data storage. You're going to have, again, a lot of it. Think data lakes. Machine learning framework libraries. Recently, there was one today that the Python library was outdated and resulted in a large hack because the Python library was old. Training infrastructure. Again, this is talking about the hardware, such as GPUs, TPUs, used to train the models. Make sure that the models are doing the right thing. Again, validation. You need to have the infrastructure built to get the data in, get the data out. And scrolling through here real quick through the other key ones on this one. Security and privacy. We're going to talk more about security and privacy here in just a minute. That's going to be a big one. And then ethical and regulatory compliance. That one may be a big one. You'll see things in the press now about, the industry is trying to come to say, oh, well, Microsoft, Google, and all of us are citing this thing saying, we're going to play nice with AI and we're going to do these things. They're trying to placate so they don't have to be forced into a corner. So that's going to be interesting to watch over probably the next 6 months. You're going to see some interesting movement. All right, so here's a doc. There's a couple of these documents today. You just take a picture, write them down, whatever. Just throw in your tool bag when you have some time, and you can go back and look. So this has a couple different docs. First one is A100-1. It is actually it's a risk framework. Think of it like the NICE framework. Very similar, but for AI. And in this particular one, it was just a graphic talking about how the impact of AI has not only on people, not only on your organization, but the whole ecosystem. So think about going around the world. So let's think about disinformation. You know, if I can get put the wrong information in there. Let's think about financial markets. Let's think about medical. You know, let's think about your car. So there's several impacts here. All right, also from the same document in here, you know, when you actually look through the risk framework model that they have, you know, they're going through and, you know, they're looking at it pretty much like any other risk model. How many people do risk? All right, so it's the same, it's a similar kind of thing. They're looking at, they want to map it, they want to know what's within the purview of the AI model, you know, what makes it up, the data lake, you know, all the different components that we just talked about. You know, where are my chances to have a problem? You know, then they want to measure what's the risk, what risk may I have on all those components. You know, and then how are we going to manage it, and then overall how am I going to govern it? And again, this A100. This one, I'm just going to go real. This is what secure, you know, trustworthy looks like. One point they brought up in the document that I thought was very interesting in here. They're saying that all these have to be in place in order to be considered a reliable AI system. What they brought up was something that I've seen in the government, at least from my side, not from the DoD side, but from my side of the government. There's always trade-offs, and I've seen it in government and industry as well. So there could be the specs on the document could say it's going to be built with this much storage, this much, you know, this many GPUs, and it's going to be this whole required list of tests that must be done, or the whole required list of validations that must get done. And now the timeline is getting tight. Maybe the government didn't do their contract right, maybe we didn't do our contract right, we're not the government. And there's trade-offs that are made. You as leaders have to make sure that you know what those trade-offs are and you're signing off on these things. And that was one point they brought up in there, that a lot of systems that they see, people kind of shortcut it for various reasons, and it bites them. All right. Another one that comes into play with AI systems, ISO 27001 and the OWASP. So OWASP, we had a couple of documents on the OWASP on here, but these are key as far as providing, you know, the different types of security that are needed, how you secure the various components that are needed. You know, we're going through and we're talking about how you do data privacy protection, how you do model security, how you do access controls, how do you deal with infrastructure security, you know, secure training environment for the model, how you test it, how you put in auditing and logging in there, and having an incident response plan for when this thing goes, you know, if you have a problem, how do you do it, having a backup and recovery in there. Again, this comes up over and over, human in the loop. All of these have been, you know, no matter which one you look at, all human in the loop in there. Also in there, having regular security training, dealing with it. And last but not least, they recommend third-party evaluators. Come in and make sure your system's doing what it's supposed to. Here's one, write this one down. OWASP top 10 for large language models. This was a really good one in there, and it walks through the top 10 attacks. This came out in March of 2023, and came up from across the world, had 500 experts come in, and they whittled it down to, they had like 600 something, and they whittled it down to 10. So write that one down. That's a good one to take home. And so the ones they go through, prompt injection. So again, language models use natural language. Okay, so they can't distinguish bad natural language from good natural language. So if you can give it a command, if you can go ahead on, you know, on the front end, so they have prompt injections you see there. If you can give it a command in there, like a SQL command, you know, if the system will take it, it'll have, you know, or let's say you tell it to go evaluate a website. Please evaluate these 3 websites and tell me how they're the same. And all 3 websites I have a line of code in there. Okay, it will read it and operate on those. If they don't have the controls in place. Insecure output comes out. If it comes out of the AI, it's not gospel. You can't, you know, you have to have the controls in place to trust it. You know, you can't just say yes, it's good to go. It's trust, but really verify. Really verify. Training data. Again, this gets back to training the model, making sure that the model has good data, the algorithms are making sense, making that it's a complete model, making sure that the data is complete, you're not pulling data from places where you shouldn't, and not using data like that. Model denial of service. How many people have used Dolly? All right, so makes the graphics and stuff on there. Well, you get a number of free ones. I learned from my youngest son is a engineer, and he goes, Dad, he's going to be a electrical engineer, and he goes, Dad, my goal is to never have to work. He goes, I want to have all these side gigs. I said, okay. So he lives with 5 other engineers, and so all these things down at the University of Texas, and so they all sit in there, and they came up with a way back in February, and they came up with a way to make YouTube videos, and they said, Dad, we're going to monetize it. So they actually got YouTube, make ChatGPT would make a script for the YouTube video. They ran it through another system that would give it a voice. As long as you don't say a celebrity's name, you can use that thing. I asked him, I said, son, don't get her in trouble. But so if you wanted to have, if you pick the actor, you could have it go ahead and read all this thing. They had Dolly making videos with it, and then they're putting it into YouTube to get YouTube subscribers. And so it was all automatic, and it worked that way. It worked for about 5 months, and then YouTube finally said, "Oh, wait a minute, we got that captcha. We want the captcha check. We want to make sure that you're a real human," and so they're working ways around it. So sorry to digress, but that is denial of service on Dolly. So I was thinking about that. I went and looked at I was doing something on Dolly, and you can put in your money in there for your credits on here, and any of these systems. ChatGPT, if you want to go to 4.0, they're monetized, right? And so if you can cause a big problem, if you can either jack up and do a whole bunch of bogus, requests and chit up all their time, or use somebody else's and chit up a lot of money. So that's one of the things we're talking about when we're talking about denial of service there. Supply chain. Just like everything else in your business, if you have a third party that you're using a service for, no matter what the service is, if you're using it with AI, same rules apply. Make sure you know that company is doing the right thing. Don't have another SolarWinds. You don't want to, but that's what we're talking about, is having that kind of environment, that kind of problem. Sensitive information. Again, you want to make sure that information, if it's medical, let's take, right now they're using a lot in the UK, using AI a lot, and it's doing remarkable things with cancer. And, but that data has to be masked. It has to be masked, it has to be encrypted. If you're not doing that, do you want to have all of your medical records sitting out on the internet? I don't. It'll be like, hey, look, Mike takes 88 pills. I don't. But, I don't want to have that going out there. But, so you want to make sure that that's happening. All right. Excessive agency. That's purely talking about saying that it has too much authority. Does it have, think least privilege. All right. Should it have the authority to do various things in your business? So, should it have the right to be able to go read the credit card file? Should it have the right to be able to read through all the employee files, read the health records? Maybe it should. Maybe it should. Depends on what you're building it for. But that's been a problem. Over-reliance. Just because it says AI does not make it any smarter than any other piece of software in your organization. Okay? People think, oh, it's a magic box. It is not. The model theft, again, at the end of the day, the real money for these things, the AI model, the math model that's underneath it, it's a file. Okay? It is software. Okay? So again, that can be stolen. Again, that same attack surface, this was their graphical. This comes from, again, from OAuth. This is the same attack surface in a graphic format. Wait, sorry, go back to some pictures, sorry. But, so this is the same thing we just talked about, the same top pin in a graphic format. All right, so this one, this is the second NIST document that I want you to take note of. It's A1 100-2 on there. And on this one, this is actually dealing with the threat landscape to AIs. Okay, so on this, again, threats to AIs. And so what they've done on this threat document, and they've done a pretty good job with it. This is an example of, if you're looking at an organization, how would you attack an organization? Where would the bad guys want to get to? The availability of the data, the integrity of the data, the privacy of the data. We've heard that day in, day out in security. But then you look at about how they're going to attack it. What they're going to do to get through it. Poisoning, black box evasion, targeted poisoning. So depending on what they're trying to do, it kind of shows how they're going to do that. Now the rest of the document lays it out in a written format. They have it in Excel, they have it in JSON, they have it in multiple ways you can use it. Good document. Here's another one, the last one I think of the big ones. The MITRE, and I think, are they here? I don't know if MITRE's here or not. I was walking around today, I couldn't remember if I saw them in there or not. MITRE Atlas. So if you think of the original MITRE framework for security, try and take care of things from on the left before they go all the way to the right. Same thing. This is for AI. And it walks you through it. Each one of these things, if you go online, each one of these you can drill down and see. You'll see overlaps with OWASP. You'll see overlaps with NIST in there, but they're all good frameworks. This one right here maps back to OWASP pretty well, and also maps back to NIST. All right, I put this in old movie day. Sorry, I was thinking AI on here again, thinking AI. So we're talking about what happens when controls don't happen, and it doesn't play there for me. But how many people watch war games? All right. It was really interesting. If you haven't seen the movie in a while, I saw it a couple months ago with my son, and it's on TV. We were watching it. It's really interesting because they go through, he did war dialing with his modem. Okay, now you do port scanning, right? Then he was going through and he was able to find an open modem. Then he found log on, asked for a log on and password. Again, similar to what we see today. They didn't have multi-factor back then, 1983. He does research. He finds out the name of the company. He does research, and he thinks that it's a game. Then he finds out that what the company is and who actually wrote it, and found that this doctor who died, supposedly died in a car wreck. And he did all the research, and then he determines the son's name, through social engineering, determines the son's name, gets into the system, and then says, I'm going to do thermonuclear, can't think of the last one is, but basically war on there, and it sets off the system. The system is autonomously tied in to the weapons. It fires these things, gets ready up, causes DEFCON to go down, it causes a problem. And so I was like, that's interesting, I can see that today. And the last one on there, we're talking about AI systems gone rogue on there. This particular one, again, a system becomes self-aware. It exceeds its capacity, it exceeds its authorization. It already had weapon access, and of course causes a nuclear war. Now, I'm not going to talk about Terminators coming back in time, or that kind of stuff, but it's very interesting when you look at movies that were made in 1968, 1983, and then in the mid-80s on there about, they nailed a lot of these things. A lot of it they didn't get right, but a lot of it they did based on what they had. So with that, I wanted to bring up basically the awareness of today. I think we're at my last slide because I know we're going to be at the 5 o'clock side. Today I wanted to bring to you some thoughts on AI, how to secure it, some thoughts on where you can get some good resources to go in a deeper read. Because you're not going to get it out of 40 minutes listening to somebody talk about it. So you're going to need to take a look and go forth and do some reading in there. Those documents that I highlighted, please take a look at them if your organization is ever considering, or for me it's an interest. I went to RSA back in whatever it was, February, whenever the RSA was, and everything was AI. You know, we listened to all the big leaders of all AI. So it's coming. So those of us who have to secure it, now's the time to do your research, do your work, and secure it. And with that, I know it's time for drinks. So thank you very much. Let's take questions. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Hey, Mike, first, I just want to say it's been so good to see you behind the pulpit again. And it really is. I was a student of yours 2 times, by the way.
Oh, okay.
And man, it really is.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so by the way, my name is Rick Norris. I'm from the Army Reserve Command there at Fort Liberty in beautiful North Carolina. Not really a question, but really a statement. Thank you so much for providing material today. And man, it's really great to see you. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's very kind. Thank you very much.